Hello, I'm Joe Ruggiero, and welcome to my podcast, Inspired, and the people that inspire me. Today, we're in for a real treat. I'm going to be talking to architect Scott Joyce. And Scott is from the East Coast, but moved out here and went to college out here. And just a little bit about this guy, because he's got really a great bio. I could go on for hours, but I'm going to keep it short because I don't want to ruin the conversation. But he's accomplished innovator and founder of a 25-year award-winning and globally published design practice encompassing luxury architecture, interiors, and aviation. And I have never seen this before, but this man has been published in Architectural Digest in the United States, Brazil, France, Italy, Middle East, I can't believe it, and then Australia, Vogue Living, which is quite a gorgeous magazine, Elle Decor, the list goes on and on. But he also has been on the Oprah Winfrey Show talking about celebrity renovation, and he'll talk a little bit about this. He's even designed a set for Cook, Trisha Southern Kitchen, and that's on the Food Network. And I think what is most interesting is he has designed the interiors of a plane for Loro Piana, the famous Italian designer. Well, without further ado, let's talk to Scott.
Hi, Joe.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Can
Great to be
we
here.
talk a little bit about your move west?
Yes.
Was it in a dream or?
Well, I came here to go to graduate school in architecture, and I'm from Philadelphia, and I was living in New York. And the school that I chose was a school that was design-based, and it was the Southern California Institute of Architecture. And at the time, it was run by Thomas Main, who's a Pritzker Prize winner now, and Frank Gehry, and some other California notables. It was a graduate school only. There was 35 students in my class, and they came from all over the world. That's what drew me here, because I wanted to be in a place that looked at design as a problem-solving solution. And it was very hands-on. We had to build models, full-scale wall sections, all sorts of things, and it was a great experience.
Well, you know, you're talking about solving problems, which I have such respect for architecture because that is what I think is needed now.
Yes, yes.
And that I would like to address how people are living.
Yeah.
I know that there was just a new law that was passed where you could have a separate dwelling in your backyard, whatever. But what do you see with your clients?
Well, I see the bigger picture of the history of sort of residential or personal architecture is it used to be very ego-driven. When you hired an architect like Frank Lloyd Wright or Robert Stern, I mean, you got sort of their building, what they were going to give you. And I think now the practice has moved a little more to customizing it for the individual use and kind of trying to solve that particular problem for that property, whether or not it's a zoning problem or a setback issue or a square footage issue or just the idea of how a client wants to live.
Now, you've designed a lot for celebrities.
Yes.
And tell me about the Oprah Winfrey.
So I ended up on Oprah Winfrey through an interview I had with the late Kirstie Alley. She called my office one day and asked me to come look at her house. She had a really beautiful 1920s Spanish house.
This is before the Al Jolson house?
Yes, in Los Feliz. And it, in all those 1920s houses, you have sort of a myriad of rooms in a kitchen, like 4 or 5 rooms for staff. And that's not how, people live now. So she needed to make that kitchen bigger because she had a family and everybody wanted to gather there. So I went on that interview, and it was terrific. And as I was leaving, she said, well, I don't have any money. I can't pay for this. But I'm going to find somebody to pay for it. I'm going to make you do it because I like you. And I said, great. And 3 months later, my phone rang, and it was Oprah Winfrey Show. And they said, hi, Kirstie Alley called us and told us that you are going to do her kitchen renovation, and we're going to pay for it, and we're going to do a show. And you're going to be on the show. And I said, great, let's do it.
Well, I had the privilege of going through the house that she owned in Encino,
Yes.
which was the old Al Jolson house.
Beautiful.
And she really did have great taste.
Yes.
I always thought, I was amazed.
She had a great architectural eye, and she really understood space and how it worked. She
Right.
wasn't an uneducated client. She was very knowledgeable.
And those are always the best.
The best.
And did you enjoy your experience on Oprah? Because
I did. It was early in my career. I was a little nervous. They flew us to Chicago,
Yes.
put us on the show. The interesting thing about the way the Oprah Winfrey Show was structured then is you were not given any outline as to what questions she would ask you. You were just told that she would ask you questions, and when she did ask you, you were to stand, you weren't to sit down, you just were to respond in a certain way, and it was sort of like trial by fire. It's Oprah Winfrey, right? Like, who
Right.
knows what she's going to ask me? So
Well,
it was great.
in 1981, I was touring the United States with my book, and I had the opportunity of meeting Oprah. And this was when she was doing a show called People Are Talking. And I came home and I said to my wife, that gal is going someplace.
Yeah.
And she said, why? I said, because she listens. She's genuinely interested
Yes.
in what you have to say. And I think that that's a great quality.
It's a great quality to have.
Yeah, it is.
And it's true. She does listen, and she is a big supporter of people that she believes in. And she believed in Kirstie Alley and built a whole show around it
Right, exactly.
and helped relaunch her career.
Well, that's interesting. She's done a lot for a lot of people, which
She has.
I must admit. But let's talk about you designing this plane. How did that come about?
So, like I mentioned earlier, I think design is really a good education in design is problem solving.
Yes.
If you can solve a problem for a building or a stadium or a tunnel or a house, you should be able to apply that skill to almost anything. And the school that I went to really taught us how to solve problems. And when my client, who I was working on a project for in Florida in Palm Beach, he approached me and said, I'm going to buy a plane for my wife for her 40th birthday. I was like, well, what a great gift, right? And he said, but it's going to be stripped. I'm buying it, and it has to be stripped and rebuilt. And I was wondering if you could do that for me. And I thought, well, why couldn't I? It's got all the same components
Right.
of a house. It has water, it has air conditioning, it has sound and plumbing, it has all the pieces. And he flew me over to the facility, which was in the Midwest, and said, well, here it is. And I walked in, and it was a stripped fuselage of a plane. There was nothing in it except the windows. And he said, so make it work. And I worked with the company that was reassembling the plane to do that, and I contacted Loro Piana, who is the luxury goods company out of Italy. And at the
Exactly.
time, there was a small family business, and now it's been purchased by LVMH. So I contacted them, and I said, look, I'm doing this very special, one-of-a-kind plane, and I need to utilize your services. I know that you don't have an aviation line of fabrics, but I will use them because all the components in the plane have to be FAA certified. So you have to have burn certs
Right.
for things, and all sorts of stuff. And there's very specific aviation fabrics. So I worked with Loro Piana on that, and we ended up using all of their fabrics. Some of them we did custom only for that plane. We used some of their leather. We had them do a custom carpet for us. And so we outfitted the entire plane except for sort of the dishes and other elements with Loro Piana fabric.
But what a wonderful project.
Yeah, it was a terrific gift. I mean, the idea was his wife was somewhat fearful of flying, and he wanted her to feel as comfortable as possible in a private plane.
Wow.
So we took the position that it was like, on your 40th birthday, you get this beautiful box.
Right.
And then you open it up, and the thing that's really beautiful is what's inside the box. So that, once you walked into that plane, it was sort of a silence of materials. There's a cashmere rug, there was cashmere wall liners, and specialty wool elements, just really beautiful, rich fabrics.
Now, you've also worked on historic sites.
Yes, I've done quite a few Wallace Neff projects here in Southern California.
And a cold court.
I did a cold court too.
Right.
Yes. Those are two classic California architects, and I've been really fortunate to work on that. I also worked on a Reginald Johnson building, did a lot of work in Santa Barbara. It's Santa Barbara City Hall. Those projects are very interesting because you have a kind of a responsibility to the original structure, and you have a responsibility to the addition that you're making. One thing that's critical for the California Historic Society is that you have to be able to tell where the addition begins and the old house is.
Right.
So you're not supposed to do a seamless connection. It has to be slightly offset so that you can always identify where the old building was and where the new building began. So that's an interesting architectural component because
Right.
if you're looking at a wall surface, you're required to offset that wall either forward or backwards. So it says this is new, this is existing.
Well, you know, that is that some kind of a law in
Yes.
California?
Yeah.
Because in Italy, I remember visiting the Four Seasons in Milan,
Mm-hmm.
and it was done by an American architect, a woman out of San Francisco. And the law is if you come upon any ancient construction when you're excavating,
Yeah.
you must retain that.
Yes.
And she found a 15th century convent that she had to work around. And luckily, I got to cover it for HGTV. It
How nice.
was fascinating. What's it like to see your projects on the covers of magazines? I mean, you've been on the covers of many magazines.
Yes. It's always surprising, Joe. It's always very surprising. And it's exciting not only for me, but also for the clients and all the people that work on the project because it validates the energy and effort that goes into making those spaces. So it's always a thrill.
Yeah, I bet it is. I remember just one cover that I think Karen shot, Karen Millay.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was spectacular.
Karen and I have a long history and a collaboration, and I've worked with her since the beginning of her photography career. And I'm a little pushy with her because we go so far back, but we have a relationship where we try to format an image that tells the story of the project, but also captures it in a way that it's useful on a cover format. So you don't want to be shooting a horizontal picture because horizontals are never used on a cover, but vertical is. And there needs to be a certain figure ground distance area for the cover. So we always try to well, I wonder if this would work on a cover. And we always do one of those shots.
Right,
So
and that's and that winds up
sometimes it winds
most
up on
of the
cover.
time. Now, you also did an entire penthouse.
Yes.
What was that like?
Yes. So the Century Building in
Right.
Century City, which was designed by the very notable Robert Stern, on the 40th floor, 41st, and 42nd, there are 3 penthouses. The 41st and 42nd is one penthouse for 2 floors. And my project was the 40th floor penthouse, which is 4 units combined into one, which is about an 8,000 square foot footprint. So we took 4 regular units and combined it into just one unit for a single guy.
And
Inside of
rattling around.
that, rattling around, the whole east end of it was curved and was the master bedroom, and it faced downtown, and
Wow.
views were spectacular. He was a person who watched movies and played video games, and when you're in a high-rise, sound travels through the concrete of floors and ceiling.
Right.
So we had to create a soundproof room for him, which we did in one of the dining room spaces. And there's a door that leads you into a soundproof box, and then another door that leads you into this, velvet-wrapped room done by the interior designer, Ellen Pagano. And we worked with an acoustician company because you had to actually hang a room within a room. So the vibration wouldn't be a direct contact between the ceiling of the screening room and the floor above. So the entire room is hung on these custom pins that absorb the sound and the shock waves from the movement of the room, and the sound stops from moving floor to floor.
Now, you are constantly solving problems.
Yes.
And I know that you're in a lot of meetings because the pre-interview, I tried to get you when
Yeah.
you were here and there, and you were locked in a chamber. But how do you keep fresh? How do you keep interested?
Well, I think the projects themselves present challenges, and we do every year take a couple projects that either are super challenging because of the zoning, it's a hillside, or it's a different type of structural solution that needs to be figured out. And we try to take those projects every now and then to kind of stay fresh. But what really keeps it going is all the people that contribute to the project.
Right.
You know, you start collaborating with people who are so well known in their industry, people who deal with sound or deal only with light or deal with music, and they have a whole different set of parameters that they have to work within, and you know, you end up getting educated through them, which is pretty terrific.
Right. Well, I think the thing that is so amazing about you is that you're able to assemble
Yeah.
this cast of characters.
We have a great team of people, really. Over the years, we've worked with some of the great civil engineers, structural engineers, acousticians, framers, tile people, stone people, all those people we've sort of developed relationships with over the years, and we try to bring them, if possible, onto almost all of our projects.
Can I ask you about your own residence?
Well, at the moment, I do not live in my own house. 15 years ago, I designed my own house, which was a challenge. It was a non-buildable lot. In Los Angeles, there are a few lots left over
Yes.
that are considered non-buildable from a zoning and construction. So I was a floor through, meaning street to street lot, just below the Hollywood sign. But it was a 68-degree angle. It's really steep. So after working, there's an oldest design review board is there in Hollywoodland, and nobody ever thought that anybody would build on that. And what drove the project was having to prove that you could get a number of parking spots on the property, which we did, and then built it. And that was 48 caisson piles, you know, stacked in the ground, 70 feet, and it's I used like an old Greek building technique, you know, where you sort of stack the building on itself as it goes up the hill. So the back wall of the first floor is the first wall of the second floor, and so forth and so on. So it's like stacked back into the hillside.
I can remember the designer James Lumsden. I don't know if you know him, but he did buy an unbuildable lot.
Yes.
And what he created with that was amazing. But at my age, I couldn't take the stairs, I don't think.
Yes.
But everything was,
Yes.
stacked.
Yes.
And I just think that is such a great opportunity because there are many of those properties that exist
Yes.
in California.
Well, it's like a typography that you would see in New York. It's like a townhouse. You know, you come in at one level and you crawl up three. And
Yeah.
it's the same concept. We're just used to living on one floor here.
Yeah.
It's a little different.
Well, that's true. And I think as the population ages, if I can say, we all are looking for that one floor.
Yes.
And although there are many cottages or, houses that are on one floor, there are also efficiencies that you have to, heat goes
Yes,
up, it
yes.
doesn't go out.
Yes, yes.
And, on and on, flat roofs. I've, been through it all, and I'm an Easterner.
Yeah.
I moved out here 34 years ago.
Yeah.
But we love the weather, and we love being here, so.
Yeah. Well, you brought up earlier this idea that you can build another unit on your property, and that is something that's the state is driving because we have a housing
Right.
shortage. And so how Los Angeles began was sort of as a suburban city, a series of these dislocated areas that were developed that then were stitched together by a freeway and made into a city. So it's a very suburban city when you drive around, at least old Los Angeles. And those houses that sit on those 5,000 square foot lots, and it might be an 1,800 square foot house or 2,000 square foot one-story house, have huge spaces. So now there's an effort to make those infills, which would be these accessory dwelling units that have their own address and have their own utilities and things like that, and then can be rented out.
Right.
And they've mandated that at this point.
And are you involved in any of those projects?
Yes, we did one of the first ones. There was a back and forth about 10 years ago where they allowed them, and then the state took them away, and then they brought them back. And the state has done away with single-family dwelling as a zoning label. There is no longer any single-family dwelling. You can put multiple units on any property anywhere in the state.
Is there an ordinance in terms of how high?
There's all sorts of rules about it. The maximum square footage you can do for an ADU is 1,100 square feet. You can do a two-story ADU, but if you do a two-story ADU, it still has to adhere to the square footage, and it has to be offset to the zoning rules. The idea was that you would convert your garage, which is about 400 or 500 square feet, into another dwelling unit.
Right.
So a garage typically sits on your rear and side yard property line. You can't really do a building with that condition because like your water's draining on your neighbor's yard, and so it's different. But a garage is not a habitable space; it's a place to put your car.
Right.
So when you turn it into something that's habitable, is when it becomes complicated. So we do lots of ADUs for people, and most of them don't rent them out, but they use them for family purposes.
Right.
It's also now exempt from the floor area ratio for the property. So typically, you max out your house at 3,000 square feet. That's it. But if you do an ADU, you get another 1,100 square feet that is exempt from the FAR.
Well, I can remember growing up on the Jersey Shore.
Yes.
And way back then, in the dark ages, people always were adding
Yeah.
on and building and, multiple dwellings and
Yes.
what have you, because property was so precious.
Well, where in the New Jersey did you grow up?
Seaside Park.
Okay, so you're restricted. You're on that island, basically. You come over a causeway onto an island.
That is correct.
There's only so many pieces of property, so the density increases.
Well, my father sold that house and moved to a wonderful cedar shake on the ocean. And we really enjoyed it. But when the family, and it was left to all of us, I'm the youngest of 5, when the family went all West Coast, Florida, East Coast, North, South, then we had to sell it. And what they did to that house was terrible because they put an apartment upstairs and they really ruined the essence
Yeah.
of the history of that house.
Where is Seaside north of Atlantic City or south?
It's north.
North, okay.
Yeah, it's a peninsula, and had wonderful memories. And my children didn't speak to me for an entire month when I sold that house, my share of that house, because there were such wonderful memories.
Well, being from Philadelphia, I spent a lot of time in the summer in Ocean City.
Oh gosh, so did I.
Yeah.
I used to, when I was in Villanova, we would commute to Ocean City.
Yeah, it's a quick drive.
Tony Mart's.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yes, Tony Mart's. Yes.
They're lots of fun.
Circle Liquor.
Right. Now, another thing that I think is so interesting about your career is that you've designed a set
Yes.
for the Food Network.
Yes, for Trisha Yearwood, who is a singer, started as a
Oh,
country
yes,
western
of
singer.
course, yes.
She's married to Garth Brooks, and I did a project for them here in Los Angeles, and she had a very old farmhouse in Brentwood, which is just outside of Nashville.
Wow.
And the original house was from like 1840, and there had been additions to it over time. And she asked me to come out and take a look at it. She goes, I can't seem to sell it. It doesn't really make sense. All the rooms don't really work. And she said, and I need to build another studio somewhere else to shoot my show, my cooking show. And we walked through the house, and I said, well, why don't you take your house off the market, and let's take your old kitchen and blow it out and make it big enough so that we can actually use your house as your studio.
Right. Great
And,
idea.
We did that. And we took an old portion of the house and blew it out and made sure we had the camera distances far enough that they could pan away from her, and that the background was all sort of detailed the way she cooks and how it was interesting, very interesting.
Well, as you probably know, my daughter is a cook and has a YouTube series, and she cooks out of her home here in California, but then also they have a home in France, so she cooks there. But it was a trend, and Martha Stewart and I go way, way back, and she built a studio in her Turkey Hill home. And then, of course, Ina Garden followed suit. So many of these cook chefs or home chefs like to work out of their homes.
Well, it was a great way for her to use her house and not have the expense of building a whole other studio somewhere else, and she could expense her house.
That's right, of course. Well, you know, the old adage, Julia Child, they asked her when she was going to retire, and she said never.
Yeah.
Because I enjoy what I'm doing,
Right.
and I can write it off.
Yes.
Oops, I don't know. Is that okay? Let me ask you this, because as you know, the title of my podcast is Inspired.
Mm-hmm.
What inspires you?
Well, that's a great question. Somebody from Lux Magazine recently asked me the same question because we won an award through their magazine. She was like, what inspires you? And I said, you know, it's really interesting, but I can get inspired by like a beautiful painting or a great book or something that sets me off into some other place. Like, how was that painting made? How was it, like, what was the idea? Or when you're reading a book, certain words that the author selects, you know, resonate with me in some way that make me think, well, what does that word actually mean? And then you're sort of inspired by that specific word or the way it's come together, and it creates sort of a visual of something in my head. So it's always sort of more art-driven, more visual is kind of what gets me. I don't really read magazines of, you know, other architectural magazines or interiors magazines. I just find my way to things that, you know, are interesting for me to look at.
It's very interesting because on this show, we try to cover my 5 pillars, which includes design.
Yeah.
And I always ask creative people what inspires them. And it's so interesting,
Yeah.
the many, many answers that I get.
Yeah.
And much of it goes back to childhood.
Oh, interesting.
They either had a grandparent that was very, you know, understanding,
Right.
or a mother who supported them, or a father that led the way. And I always love to investigate the process because I think you either have it or you don't.
Right.
And I think that many of us, and I think that, you know, you acquire these skills
Yes.
until you realize you have them.
Yes.
And many people, it takes a while for them to understand exactly what direction they're going to go.
Yeah, many people have some of these skills that don't get developed.
Right.
And what happens is you find yourself in an environment that supports the conversation of that particular idea or thought, and then maybe you go to school and it gets fostered and developed, and you learn how to fine-tune it like a musician learns how to play,
Right.
you know, master violin. It's the same idea.
Right.
So it's just a question of whether or not the people that you're around recognize that you might have that trait and find a way for you to exploit it.
Mentors or supporters.
Mentor, teachers, family
Right.
members, neighbors. Like, you know,
Right.
in my particular case, my parents were not super supportive about it because they weren't visual people. They didn't really understand it.
Right.
But I had a neighbor who was a painter and his wife was a writer, so they understood, and I spent a lot of time talking to them and hanging out with them as a kid and understanding how they worked, and I think that helped open up things for me.
Absolutely. Well, you know, we are at the Calabasas Country Club,
Yeah.
and they're just such great hosts. And the thing that amazed me, because this was the old Warner Ranch, and Harry Warner is the gentleman that owned this property, and then it became a movie production site.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and many people don't. And the architecture, they used to build old villages here. And the architecture and the vision of those studio designers, I
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah.
is just, they were only, you know, single or maybe
Flat
2
facades,
sides.
yeah.
But they brought you to the world of design.
Yeah.
And I thank you so much for sharing
Sure.
your experience with us, and I hope you'll come back.
Of course, it was a pleasure.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks.